So first of all, just to welcome you to the EPP Congress. 2 points before we start. First of all, we don't have much time, so this is rapid fire interview to Madam President. And the second point, after long process and discussion, we decided to go in the first name basis. So it's not because of the...
I have known you for decades, Tommy, and every time we have this conversation, I tell you, don't call me Madam President, call me Roberta. That's what you knew me as.
Exactly. So, you know, this is a...
That's how we are.
That's how we are, exactly. So let's go to the issue. Now, more or less, we are 1 year after European elections. New composition, new dynamics. What's your conclusion? How does it look like? How does it feel like to be a president of the current parliament?
So if I look back to 1 year ago today, when we were at the peak of our election campaign, where we were listening to citizens to see what they wanted from the next 5 years. Of course, the world is very different today to what it was 1 year ago. But at the end of the day, citizens asked us 3 things. They said, look, we would like to make sure that we feel safe.
Yes.
We would like to make sure that our children are able to find employment in the European Union, in this country, in this village that I live. And we want to make sure that we have a dignified life. And if I look to the result of the elections and the parliament as it looks today, you see that the result is a reflection of those 3 requests. And we, for the past year, have been working to deliver on those very basic requests. Against which backdrop? We still have a war on our continent.
Yeah.
We have a realization that we have not spent anywhere near enough on security and defense. We have realized that our processes were for far too long, too slow, too bureaucratic for our businesses. So we have reformed. We make our processes faster. Our majorities need to be built.
Yeah.
And we need to build them to address what those citizens want. So I think we have gone back to basics and we have responded in the most effective manner so far.
Great. Let's jump to the not totally other issue, but the main discussion in the latest 2 weeks, or maybe last 3 months, which is of course the European-US relations, Trump administration. So how, from Parliament perspective, how should we deal with the new administration? Because there's many scenarios and possibilities.
So I will answer you this question irrespective of what has happened, what could happen, what
Yes.
is. That we cannot remove the fact that the United States is our largest and best ally.
Yes.
For different reasons. On a transatlantic perspective, when we see what do we align with, we are the world's greatest economic partners, each other. There's no one else that would replace the United States in this regard. In terms of fundamental principles that we align over, liberty, democracy, protection of fundamental rights, these are the basic values of democracies.
Yes.
Where we look at each other and we say, at the end of the day, our alliance has to remain strong. Now, how do we deal with it? How do I deal with it? So we have excellent relations with Congress.
Yes.
We speak to all colleagues, whether they are Republicans or Democrats. I have an excellent relationship with the Speaker of the House of Congress, and we have a format for speakers within the G7 where we have very regular contact. I'm very often in the United States, and US members of Congress are very often in Europe. Where do we look at, and how do we look into this new, let's say, call it discussion? Because for me, I would always call for discussion and de-escalation rather than a road to the bottom, slippery slope of trade wars. That is not something that anybody would win from.
Yeah.
Everybody would suffer. The European Union would suffer. Each of our individual member states would suffer. But also consumers on both sides of the Atlantic would suffer. US companies would suffer. So this is something that we need to continue and use this 90-day pause to work on. In other words, de-escalation, discussion, and at the end of the day, I think a little bit of self-confidence as well.
Indeed, indeed. I would go back what you said, made reference to defense policy, because indeed, according to the recent Eurobarometer, you know, there's a big change now in the opinion, especially Northern Europe. Northern European citizens are very much looking that the European Union should focus on the issue of defense issue where, you know, the competencies at the end of the day are rather limited. So from Parliament point of view, how do you see, how should we approach the defense issue, how to develop?
Well, we have 4 years asked for more investment and the creation of a proper defense union.
Yeah.
This is not new. We have been calling for this, I would say, for almost a decade, where the Parliament had pushed for a white paper on defense. Why? Because we are directly elected by our citizens, and our citizens have been asking what they ask us today. Now, what do we realize today?
Yeah.
We understand that we have perhaps been over-benefiting from the so-called peace dividend for many decades. And as a result, our expenditure has gone down, our investment has gone down, and we have become comfortable to what we took for granted. But we can no longer take it for granted. We have a war on our continent, we have our security, whether it is from a physical security, cyber security, as a continent security, realized that we cannot only rely on other countries outside the European Union to come save us if things go wrong. So the reaction we've seen is a belated but finally welcome one, and the investment that is being put and the readiness to help even domestic production for many countries, you mentioned the Nordic countries as a case in point, in order to make sure that we also remain competitive in the area of security.
Thank you. Next issue, I would go to issue which is very dear to you, I would claim, and I would also claim historic perspective that, which is the issue of Ukraine, what happened, and that moment when the war, the third invasion started, 22. I think you were the personality who really were, united and were the European voice on the European very clear position. Now we have the couple of last days, we had meetings with our transatlantic friends, and they very much were pushing and advising us that really Ukraine, you should really integrate them quickly, enlargement quickly. And so how do you see that, the whole enlargement discussion and especially as it comes to Ukraine, how to integrate them to our EU family?
Well, first of all, let's restate what was true on the 24th of February 2022. If we're going to talk about peace on our continent, we need to be clear about what we mean by peace. We mean peace with justice, peace with dignity, peace with territorial integrity. Today, that is exactly what we say about what is happening on our continent. So that's why we continue to insist that we will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, and that nothing can be decided about Ukraine without Ukraine, which is why what we saw happening during the funeral of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, is actually something we welcomed, because discussion with Ukraine as to how we find a solution to this conflict that was illegal, that was unprovoked and unjustified and started by Russia can be resolved in the longer term. And as we called immediately as a parliament, enlargement has always been considered a win-win. I remember attending congresses of the EPP before my country joined the European Union, and exactly the same thing used to be said then. Of course, it is a merit-based, it is about making sure that mileposts are achieved and goals are reached, but never let go of the fact that if a country is looking to Europe as its home, then we should fling our doors wide open.
Good. Now the final question, Roberta, and maybe the very reason why we are here in the EPP Congress, which is democracy. During the last, months, especially, but also internally here in the European Union, in Europe, there's big discussion about rise of authoritarianism, populism, a state of democracy, how to fight democracy here in Europe, but of course it also relates to the whole discussion about common values in the transatlantic relations. So how shall we do it? How shall we do that struggle internally, externally? What would be your advice?
Well, by countering it. We are more than ever before flooded by populist, propagandist, fake narratives that are pushed either domestically or externally by countries that do not like democracy. And that is something we cannot look away. It is why we have the Digital Services Act. It is why we have created a committee on the Democracy Shield, on why I am proud to lead an institution that places democracy at the very heart of everything we do in helping countries that want to join the European Union, in helping neighboring countries that look to Europe for that democratic protection. We need to be prepared to give it, and we need to fight for it. If we don't fight for it, the space will be filled by those who do not want us to exist. And the caution, I mean, that we need to operate with is very high, especially with elections, especially in how democracy is conducted, especially when we see that democracy is really threatened, also on our continent. I'm optimistic we can combat it, I'm optimistic we can counter it, but we need to be very vocal in doing so.
Great. Roberta, Madam President, I think it's
Thank
good
you.
conclusion. So we know that you have to continue to struggle, to fight also here in the EPP Congress.
we will.
To spread the word.
And you
So
too, I need your help to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
No.
So thank you so much,
Thank you, Tommy.
Madam President, and we
Thank
stay
you.
in tune. Thank you so much.
Thank you.